Adam Smith, right, in the 1770s, he wrote this book on the wealth of nations. He was comparing UK with England and France, and why are some nations thriving and other nations seem stagnant. He, for example, wrote in his book, you know, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, and the baker that we get our dinner, but it's from their self-regard, their self-interest. So he was saying we're all self-interested, and that's what makes the economy work. Now, Adam Smith was 43 when he wrote his book. He was living at home with his mum, and he completely forgot to recognize or mention that he also got his dinner from his mum. So this is the shape of progress, and you can still hear this shape of progress in every politician's speech, in every economist's advice. It had a century of absurdly cheap energy because of fossil fuels, and now that's going, and now new energy costs are going to come in, and we're going to actually appreciate the value of energy for the first time, and not to waste it, but it's going to change what's normal and what can be done. We will have to learn to adapt to that, have to learn to respect the resources we have a use of, and be far more creative and smart in using them. Right? We've inherited linear degenerative systems. We take new materials, let me go to the mine, let me go to the forest, get more new materials, stick it in the pipe of production, make it into something we want, use it sometimes only once, and then at the other end of it, we just throw it away. And that's what's pushing us over planetary boundaries. So this linear needs to become circular. It needs to become a cyclical, regenerative economy. So the new paradigm says you've got to use resources again and again and again, far more carefully, more collectively, more creatively, and more slowly. And the beauty of it is it's actually an invitation to creativity.
Kate Raworth, bienvenue à toi sur cette chaîne qui s'appelle Limite. On est là pour parler de limites planétaires, d'épuisement des ressources, de limites humaines aussi. Et notre but, en fait, est d'essayer de rendre à des spectateurs, des personnes qui sont à la fois sur ces questions et à la fois pas du tout, ça leur permet, on essaye en tout cas de leur amener des réponses à beaucoup de questions qui se posent et aussi des solutions dans un monde où on entend beaucoup de mauvaises nouvelles. Et je dois avouer que oui, nous y participons aussi sur cette chaîne à parler un petit peu des mauvaises nouvelles. Si vous venez d'arriver, abonnez-vous, likez, commentez, ça va être très important durant tout le long parce qu'on a vraiment cet honneur d'avoir Kate Raworth aujourd'hui avec nous. Alors Kate, comment tu te sens? Comment vont tes émotions? Comment est ton feeling là?
I'm very happy to be here with you. It's nearly 2025, right? We're nearly a quarter of the way through the 21st century. So that keeps striking me. Where are we? How are we moving? Are we moving backwards, forwards? So that's the big question in my head all the time. How do we just make things go the direction they need to go? But right now, I'm really happy to be here in Brussels. I'm really happy to be here with you and in this conversation.
So, tu te concentres sur des petits moments, des petites relations, là, voilà, on discute, on est là, qui te permettent aussi en même temps techniquement de pouvoir tenir et rester focalisé sur cette mission malgré toutes les mauvaises nouvelles qui peuvent nous entourer. C'est un peu ça.
I feel so clear about what I'm doing, and I get so much energy from the people around who are doing stuff like that it's like I just keep going. You know what it makes me think of? Imagine being on a ship at sea and there's a storm and the ship is churning and there's water coming overboard and your job is to stand in the crow's nest at the top and point to where we want to go. Even if there's water coming in, you stay in the crow's nest and you just keep pointing this way, let's keep going this way, because you know there are other people on deck who are bailing out the water. There are other people who are grabbing the sail, who are holding the rudder. So trust that you're part of a big team and do the job that you've been asked to do, that you've been tasked to do. So even though there's bad news and crises and shocks, it makes me feel very, very clear. Also, I have 15-year-old kids, twins, girl and a boy.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We've made it this far together. You know, if I just at this point said, there's too much bad news in the world, it's too hard, I give up. I mean, how will I explain to them in decades forward, like, oh, so Mum, you just like gave up? I mean, actually, of course there are crises. Show me a decade of life on Earth when there wasn't crisis and bad news. I mean, this is how humans seem to live. And yet, at the same time, people are always rising up and saying, and we're going to change. I have a conviction. So I'm just going to stick on this team.
Ça nous dépasse en fait. Ça dépasse notre petite existence, notre naissance. C'est quelque chose dans lequel on doit s'impliquer. Et ça fait beaucoup écho. Ça résonne beaucoup chez moi, ce que tu dis. Parce que si j'ai décidé de quitter le monde du matérialisme, le monde, je t'avais dit avant qu'on démarre cette vidéo, des jets privés, de mixer partout sur Terre, et de cette profusion d'iPhone, de téléphone, de PlayStation, c'est parce qu'il y a mes enfants, et donc je le fais pour eux, principalement. Sinon, j'aurais bien voulu continuer à faire ma vie, mais je pense que non, effectivement, ça nous dépasse. Et justement, je voudrais, pour les néophytes qui viennent d'arriver, et même pour les habitués, ça va être la partie où on va se faire un peu du mal, Kate. Ça va être le moment où on va devoir faire un état des lieux. Toi, ton travail, c'est d'amener des solutions, mais aussi de comprendre vers où est-ce qu'on en est. Et justement, je voudrais savoir où est-ce qu'on en est. L'humanité, les sociétés humaines, la planète, les êtres vivants. En 2024, fin 2024 maintenant, début 2025, qu'est-ce qui se passe?
Well,
c'est le moment is the hard part.
Yeah. You know, we can look at where we are right now and see a very, very depressing picture. We can look at the stats of the pressure we're putting on the planet, the division in the world, the conflicts, the injustices in the world. And that will be enough to make anybody turn their back. I'm diving back into consumerism. But you can also come back to this same place and look with different eyes and see actually so much of an alternative economy, an alternative society, an alternative politics that people so determined to make happen that they just keep rising, keep making it happen, keep bringing it through. So I see both of these realities. And you know, sometimes people say to me, you know, are you optimistic or pessimistic? Well, if we say I'm pessimistic, it's too hard, it's too late, it's too complex, the world is in too much crisis, so I give up. Well, we make it true. Because all the people who want to change it just give up. It happens. So I observe the breakdowns that are happening to the planet. I just come from the UK. The country was flooded. I could hardly get here. You know, it's happening across Europe, but it's happening across Africa. It's happening heat waves across Asia. It's in the news every day. I started working on climate change issues in around 2006, and when I was working at Oxfam, and we wanted to campaign on climate change. And we sat down at a table to try and imagine a campaign, and we said, let's try and write headlines from 2030 of what might be happening in the world to help people think forward. The headlines we wrote down about crises were nowhere close to what's actually already happening in the world. We couldn't imagine the extent of disruption that was already locked in. But this just makes me all the more determined to see the other, to see where people are changing the way they farm, the way they live, the way they raise their kids, the way they run a business, the way they make policy. It makes me more determined to help make visible these rising alternatives. I think they're going to rise out in the middle of a very turbulent chaos. They're going to rise up. So I want to be on that team. And sometimes people say, you know, this is an extraordinary time to be alive, with almost like two meanings of extraordinary. It's like extraordinary as in crisis, extraordinary, and it's an incredible privilege, opportunity, responsibility to be alive right now, and to be able to ask yourself, what am I going to do in this context? I happen to be one of the human beings who's alive right now. So what am I going to do for it? That's how I respond to the state of the world.
L'humanité a toujours dû faire face à des chocs, à des turbulences, à des transformations. Est-ce que pour toi, ce que nous sommes en train de vivre maintenant est le final boss, le boss final, la crise des crises, l'événement, le momentum de l'humanité face auquel il n'a jamais dû faire face? On n'était pas là avant. We were not there before. But now it looks that the whole humanity is in the same boat. You know what I mean?
So, big questions.
Sorry.
Deep questions.
Welcome on limit.
So, yeah, I think humanity's relationship with the rest of the living world is like the mother problem, to put it that way. It's the most profound thing our culture, I'm going to name my Western culture, has ignored, written out of the economics books, written out of our training or education, even our own identities. It deeply neglected the living world, and it's coming back with a very big boomerang answer to us as a result of that. I think it's the boss problem in that once you push yourself beyond planetary limits, there comes a point where it's no longer a choice to say, oh, I'm sorry, let's go back. Mm-hmm. No, it's out of your hands now. The reinforcing feedback impacts of melting, heating. When we say, oh, I realized this was a mistake, sorry, it's run away now. You've left it too late. So on that basis, I think it is an ultimate, a major, another level crisis. Financial crises are major crises, but they're crises of something we entirely invented, finance. It's a totally human construct. Wars and conflicts that we create are tragic and devastating, but they are battles amongst humans. But when we put ourselves in a relation of actually breaking down the life support systems that we depend on, mm-hmm. then it's like we're playing with the next level up. You know, watch out who you're playing with, what you're playing with. And for that reason, I would say, yeah, this is a very existential one.
You said before that, tu as dit juste avant, que tu commences à voir émerger ces alternatives.
Yeah.
You just watched all these alternatives emerge from territories, cities. Moi, ma question, c'est, est-ce que les alternatives deviennent la norme à partir du moment où l'humanité fait face à une perte immense, ou est-ce que, au contraire, les alternatives peuvent émerger à flot continu, c'est-à-dire qu'il n'y a pas trop de déstabilisation, pas trop de guerre, pas trop d'épuisement des ressources, pas trop de problèmes climatiques, mais que l'alternative arrive par l'éducation et la culture? Ou est-ce que non, l'alternative va devenir la norme le jour où je ne pourrai plus manger, je ne pourrai plus boire, je ne pourrai plus vivre ma vie comme je la vis habituellement, que je perds ma maison dû à meteorological climate events, you know? Je voulais ton avis là-dessus. Et après, on va parler de l'alternative.
I think we can't wait till then. Because if we literally wait until we've scorched the land, there's no food, I mean, that's deep breakdown of human relations. I really would never want to advocate a strategy. Oh, let's like bring on the collapse and then we'll start again. No way. We have to learn now, practice now, what it means that we are a pro-social animal, right? So evolutionary biologists who study humans and study how we've evolved, they say we are the most pro-social of all mammals. We cooperate, collaborate, we depend upon each other in a way that no other mammal does. You know, if we were doing the things, if cats and dogs were doing things that humans do, there would be all over the internet, right? The videos of the cats and dogs opening doors for each other, cats and dogs collaborating. I mean, we outperform them so many times over. But we've taught ourselves, we tell ourselves these stories that we are competitive, rational, utility seekers, pleasure seekers, we have insatiable wants. And so when we tell these stories to ourselves, that's who we start to become. Research has found, the more we tell each other a story of who we are, we start to mimic that story.
C'est la culture récente, c'est la culture actuelle qu'on nous a mis, individualisme et tout ça. Et donc on le devient parce qu'on nous le raconte.
So people sometimes say, you can only learn to swim when the water is at waist high. So, okay, that would go with, we have to have a certain level of breakdown and then we'll learn to swim. But hey, you know, it takes time to learn to swim. And if the water is filling up really fast, you need to be practicing your swimming before you actually do it. So I think that we need to practice and build now the resilience, the skills, the reflex of the values of I collaborate with you, I trust you. Let's make ways of working together, ways of running small enterprises together, ways of sharing water together, ways of making decisions together in a participatory way. Let's make that normal enough that it's already practiced. I think we are going to see huge changes in our societies. I think energy that we've thought is, you know, energy, turn on the lights, drive the car. We've had a century of absurdly cheap energy because of fossil fuels. And now that's going. And now new energy costs are going to come in. And we're going to actually appreciate the value of energy for the first time and not to waste it. But it's going to change what's normal and what can be done. We're going to see water scarcity in many places. Already many places have lived for decades with water scarcity. The water's turned on and off, available only sometimes in the day. Same with power, right? So what's normal to some people in parts of Africa, parts of Asia, Middle East, I think will become a pattern that's more likely seen in today's high-income countries. We will have to learn to adapt to that, have to learn to respect the resources we have a use of and be far more creative and smart in using them. So I don't want ever to say, let's see the thing collapse before we rebuild anew. That's inflicting terrible, tragic disaster on huge communities and not a great place to build.
We need to transform, right?
We need to transform, for sure, for sure.
C'est tellement beau parce que là maintenant, dans cet amas de mauvaises nouvelles, de réalités que nous sommes en train de vivre, donc pour vous informer, nous tournons cette vidéo à la fin 2024, nous sommes presque en octobre, et l'été, the summer, we break a lot of records. Again, it was the same in 2003, same in 2002, and we reached the 1.5 for last year, and maybe this year too. Pour que ça reste les 1,5 degrés des accords de Paris, il faudrait pour ça le rester une plus longue période. Mais malgré tout, quand on regarde les courbes, et on va tenter de vous en montrer là pendant qu'on parle, on voit que les records se rapprochent de plus en plus. On se dit, mais dans 20 ans, dans 30 ans, qu'est-ce qui va se passer? Et on le sait, c'est écrit dans les rapports du GIEC, dans les rapports de l'IDEE, on le sait, on est capable de le modéliser aujourd'hui. Et quand tu parlais de ces nouveaux mondes qui émergent, toi, Kate, je voudrais te remercier et je voudrais qu'on rentre vraiment dans ce sujet-là. Tu as écrit un livre sur la théorie du donut, qui permet de changer le modèle économique, alors qui ne permet pas de changer, c'est à nous de le décider, mais qui est une alternative au modèle économique dans lequel on est. Et je voudrais savoir en fait, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, qu'on ait continué dans le modèle économique dans lequel on est, qui est quelque chose qui pour moi est linéaire et croissant. C'est, on prend la terre, on transforme, on te vend ton iPhone, et on recommence le cycle pour gagner de l'argent et aller dans un sens, sans avoir regardé ni de près ni de loin les ressources disponibles, l'énergie disponible, et d'avoir utilisé beaucoup l'humain comme juste une main-d'œuvre hiérarchisée, avec des personnes peu nombreuses, qui ont un impact sur beaucoup de personnes, dont tous les événements climatiques qui s'y passent chez eux ne rentrent pas dans nos considérations. In French, we say le mort au kilomètre. Oh, poor black people dying there in Somalia. Oh, it's not important. C'est horrible. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé qu'on n'ait pas vu le truc venir? Qu'est-ce qui se passe qu'on veut maintenir ce système économique? Je parlais de l'ancien, celui qui, business as usual, qui veut toujours aller vers le haut.
Great question.
How they blocked the way we can rethink the economy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fool. So, why are we still stuck in this when it's so clearly wrong? The old economic mindset. So the economics that is taught in universities and then becomes the language of policymakers and advisors, but also the language of journalists on the radio asking the questions, is, I think, it was written in kind of textbooks of the mid-19th century, often based on ideas of the century before. So it's really deeply out of date. It always starts with supply and demand, the market, prices. It puts that at the center of vision. There's almost no mention of the living world. Maybe now in a course they'll say, oh yeah, we'll talk about climate change and solving. But it doesn't begin by recognizing that the economy is embedded in the living world and utterly dependent upon it. I think, why did it begin this way? I think when you go back to the founding fathers of economics, right? Some of the founding fathers.
When was it and who?
Yeah, so some of the founding fathers, I mean, Adam Smith, right, in the 1770s, he wrote this book on the wealth of nations. He was comparing the UK with England and France, and why are some nations thriving and other nations seem stagnant. He, for example, he wrote in his book, you know, it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, and the baker that we get our dinner, but it's from their self-regard, their self-interest. So he was saying we're all self-interested and that's what makes the economy work. Now, Adam Smith was 43 when he wrote his book. He was living at home with his mum, and he completely forgot to recognize or mention that he also got his dinner from his mum. So he's sitting at home writing his book, you know. It's thanks to the interest of the butcher, the brewer, and the baker that I have my dinner. And I always imagine if he's writing this, his mum says, Adam, dinner's on the table. You know, would he have thought, my mother, I have to mention my mother. I have to mention the unpaid caring work of women that provides everything around me. But he didn't. So unpaid caring work was completely left out of economics because it was written by men. Now, add to this, economics was written by white men in the global north, who come from countries that are, first of all, David Ricardo, he was worried that England would run out of agricultural land, and that the price of land and the scarcity of land was what was going to constrict the economy. But hey presto, we discover colonialism and we start taking land in other countries. Oh, actually, it seems land is not so much a scarce factor, so we stop paying attention to that. So by both of these examples, it shows that who writes economics means it determines what they notice and what they ignore, and what's put at the center of their theory and what's left outside. Women's work, colonialism meant the scarcity of resources. No, we worry about labor, not resources, because there's always more. And then even in Adam Smith's day, the economy was 1/300th of the size that it is today. So even when they had their little chimneys and the smoke coming out, I can understand that they thought, well, yes, there's some smoke, but the sky is so high, the oceans are so deep, we little humans, what impact could we make? It can't possibly matter, right? We seem to be small in relation to the size of the world. And then over time, the poets have always written poetry, telling about the degradation of the land, the smog, the cities. The poets saw it, but the economists didn't bring the insights of poetry into their theories. We carry on with these theories. Why do we carry on with these theories? I think because they serve those who own the wealth and who are making the money. It serves to ignore unpaid caring work of women. It serves to ignore the degradation of the living world. It kind of serves actually to ignore power relations and not need to talk about colonial histories in our economics. Let's just keep using this theory because it puts money in the pockets of those who are doing very well already. And then economics becomes like a very grand profession, very technical. Are you good with numbers? If not, goodbye, right? It becomes depoliticized, apparently. So it's all about calculations, mathematics.
In the same kind of group of people.
And one group of people, yeah. So even today, people often say to me, oh, you're a woman and you're an economist. Like, isn't this unusual? I mean, crazy that it would be unusual, right? But actually, there's so few women and so few people of color who have gone into economics. And sometimes within economics, they say, this is really bad. We must bring in more women and more people of color. I think, well, hey, you need to change the theories and actually make them reflect the realities of everybody. And actually, we need to bring in many, many views because people can see things that one can't. The example of Ha-Joon Chang, he's a fantastic heterodox economist. He was born in South Korea when it was called a third world country. And he watched his country go from being extremely low income to one of the richest in the world by using a very protective industrial strategy, the opposite of what things like the World Bank told countries, open up your trade, open up your trade. Well, South Korea did the opposite, and they succeeded. So Ha-Joon Chang brings a really important insight from his own experience in his life of seeing what can be good economic policy that you'll never get coming from the West, which has a different historic desire to liberalize everybody else's markets for its own interest. So economic theory is really political, and I mean with a small p, like it's personally political, it's gender, it's about race, it's about class, and we need people who have all these experiences to be part of reshaping economics so it reflects the whole of reality and not just those narrow interests that keep us in this old system that's literally destroying the planet. We need ecologists to frame economics from day one.
And now we have one of the solutions. Your solution, not exactly your, because it's a lot of work, c'est beaucoup de travail, hein, mais ta solution, c'est la fameuse économie du donut.
La fameuse économie du donut.
Exactly. Et je voudrais que tu nous expliques un peu en quoi ça consiste. Comment, les questions sont assez larges, hein, mais on sait déjà qu'il y a pour point de référence les 9 limites planétaires de Johan Rockström, que je vous affiche. Dont malheureusement 6 ont été dépassés et où l'acidification des océans, à l'heure où on parle.
Newsflash. Yesterday, they put out a new report. 7 have been passed.
Acidification of ocean, right?
Oh, he's on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had the information, but I was not sure. I read it very fast. Je l'ai vite lu sur Twitter. J'étais pas sûr. Il fallait que.
I haven't read it yet. You're ahead of me. Somebody told me yesterday. Oh, this is out of date. There's now 7.
Bon ben voilà, vous avez l'information officielle. Et peut-être que vous l'avez déjà eu entre temps, le temps que cette vidéo sorte, qu'une 7e a été dépassée. C'est l'acidification des océans qui absorbe malheureusement trop de carbone dû aux émissions de gaz à effet de serre d'origine anthropique. Donc ça prend en référence ces 9 limites planétaires, dont 7 ont été dépassées, et ça prend en même temps ce qui est nécessaire pour les démocraties, pour stabiliser une société, ce que en fait, chaque être humain mérite, c'est-à-dire un salaire décent, un accès à l'eau, un accès à l'énergie, de l'égalité, équité de genre, lutte contre le racisme, enfin vraiment qu'on puisse trouver les meilleurs systèmes pour avoir fonctionné en société et ne pas nous faire la guerre, ne pas nous disputer, ne pas la déstabiliser, bref, ce qui a été construit de mieux dans toute l'histoire de l'humanité. Comment ça fonctionne ça explique-moi un petit peu, et explique-nous surtout.
I'm going to start with the old economy.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with this question. What is the shape of progress? Right? The economics I learned at university in the 1990s, this was the shape of progress. Never-ending growth, right?
Growth.
It grows up, it goes up through the ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's measured in money.
And by the way, using coal, then fossil fuels.
Yes.
Boom. Oh.
There we go. Exactly. Fossil fuels are what made it go boom. So this is the shape of progress. And you can still hear this shape of progress in every politician's speech, in every economist's advice.
YouTube, by the way.
Economic growth. Yeah, economic growth. It's everywhere. So this shape of growth, there's nothing in nature that succeeds by growing like this. Plants don't do this. Humans don't do this. This is nature's growth curve, right? Things grow and then they grow up and they thrive. So we need to move away from this false metaphor of endless growth. So that was what really motivated me. How do we redraw, redescribe the shape of progress? So for this, I have a rubber ring, a donut. Ta-da! Here's one you blew up earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you for the work. Thank you for the work.
You're
okay,
welcome.
So I want you to think of this donut as like a 21st century compass for humanity. And if you think of, I'm going to go here, think of humanity's use of Earth's resources radiating out from the middle of this, right, going all the way out. So it means this hole in the middle, this is a place where people are falling short on the essentials of life. This is a bad place. People do not have the resources they need for healthcare, education, food, water, housing, transport. We want to leave nobody in this hole. And the dimensions of this hole, I crowdsourced them from the world's governments. You know, they created the Sustainable Development Goals. I took all the social priorities from those: food, water, energy, housing, income, voice, equity, gender equality.
Education.
All here. So leave nobody in the hole, falling short on the essentials of life. We all need to use enough resources to get over this inner ring. I call it the social foundation. Okay?
Yeah.
Leave no one in hole, get out of poverty. But, and this is a very big 21st century but, as we seek to meet our needs and our wants, right? We have a lot of wants as well as our needs. we don't only get out of the social foundation, but we start to use so much of Earth's resources with fossil fuels, materials, construction, food, gadgets.
The green thing right here is the earth, by the way. It's a kind of the ecologic system.
Yeah, this is a good space where we want to live in the green ring, but here, this is the outer boundaries. This is the planetary boundaries on the outside.
Yeah.
And we don't want to overshoot outside here. So we don't want to leave anybody here in the hole, but we also don't want to be out here. Because here we are putting so much pressure on this planet, this unique, delicately balanced living planet, that we are going to cause ecological breakdown. We're pushing beyond the capacity that our planet has. Too many carbon emissions in the atmosphere, acidifying the oceans, we create a hole in the ozone layer. So we don't want to leave anybody here, but we don't want to end up out here. And that means we need to be in this green donut-shaped space itself. This is where we meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet. So that's the donut. Can we meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet? Leave no one in the hole. Don't overshoot Earth's limits. That's what it is.
Staying into the donuts.
Staying in the donut. And as you just did with your finger, right? Now the shape of progress has completely changed. It's not...
It's the circle of life, by the way.
It's the circle of life. And it's like, I think also like a heartbeat, right? We thrive and we've got to find this Goldilocks zone between the inside and the outside. It's much closer to what we already know in our own bodies as health, right? I want some food, but not too much. I want some warmth, but not too much. I need some water, oxygen, but not too much. Everything in our bodies, what keeps us alive, is because we have enough, but not too much. Health is in that zone. And if we can take what we deeply know in the human body to the planetary body, to me, that's like a really powerful metaphor when insight, to thrive, we don't want grow. In my own body, I would call that cancer. I don't want anything to grow in my body. I want to thrive. So the donut is an invitation to say, this is the starting point for economics. What if the goal of the economy is to meet the needs of all people within the means of the living planet? Then what kind of economy would we construct? What kind of economics would we teach in universities? What policies would governments make? What kind of businesses would we want to see? What kind of lifestyles? What kind of cities would we design? Then it becomes an incredibly exciting question that you think, okay, in the midst of these crises, I want to be part of the team that's actually starting to make this possibility visible.
This is so huge, so beautiful, and also so it looks so big that I was wondering, like, how did you think about that? Was it an eureka moment one day in your bed, like, oh yeah, I know how maybe we can make it? Or is it the job of many people? Sure, Johan Rockström and all the residence center of Stockholm to understand the planet boundaries, but how did comment est-ce que cette idée, parce que je dois quand même parler français dans ce talk, hein, comment cette idée a réussi en fait à te parvenir? Est-ce que c'était un moment eureka, genre, ah ouais, mais c'est ça l'évidence?
It did come, boom, like that. I have twins. They're now 15 years old. But when they were tiny babies, I took a year off my work. I worked at Oxfam. I was nursing my babies, watching on the TV screen the global financial crash.
2008, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And all the economists running around. The Queen of England said, why did the economists not see this coming? And all the economists went crazy, like we're having to justify. And they said, we must rewrite economics to reflect financial realities. And I remember sitting there with these babies, me immersed in the unpaid care economy, very real, thinking, I'll be damned if we're only going to rewrite economics to reflect financial realities. Really? I mean, really? What about the ecological breakdown? What about social crises? What about unpaid care? Come on, this is the time to really get serious about rewriting economics. I come back to my job at Oxfam at the end of my maternity leave. And one of the first things my colleagues show me, I was in the research team, so like, what ideas have been happening this year? I've only been nursing babies, I haven't seen anything. Somebody shows me these planetary boundaries, puts it on my desk, these 9 planetary boundaries overshooting. And I literally had this visceral moment. Wow, that is, it's like here, this is they drew this circle and then all the overshoot. And I think this circle, they're telling us that the economy must exist within this circle. That is what has been missing from mainstream economics forever. And it's like the economists didn't do it, so it's like the natural scientists have come along. What I saw is like the scientists have said, okay, economists, if you won't do this, we'll do this. In fact, we've done it already. And we've described this not in monetary terms, we've described this in terms of Earth. Parts per million of carbon dioxide, tons of nitrogen, tons of water, hectares of land, right? This is Earth speaking. This is how much pressure you can put on me and no further. So I was so struck by this, and I just thought, this is the beginning of 21st century economics. So I'm sitting at my desk in Oxfam, a big open plan office. The campaigns team are raising a campaign to raise money. There was a drought in the Sahel, millions of people on the verge of starvation. They were campaigning for the right of health and education for every child in South Asia. And I was thinking, if the Earth scientists are telling there's an outer limit of pressure on the planet, there's an inner limit too. Every person's human right? We have to put the social story inside this ecological story. So if they've drawn an outer circle, I took my pen and I drew this inner circle of the social justice together with the ecological integrity. And then, so I had this picture, it looked like a donut. Do you know what I did with it next? I thought, well, I like that, but I don't know. I put it in the bottom drawer of my desk for about 6 months because I thought, well, I like that picture, but I mean, it's just a picture. And then every time I was in a conversation with somebody, we need to change the economy. I said, I just... And they said, oh, yeah, that's good. And I said, oh, okay. I was really surprised how much people responded to this picture. Pictures are really powerful, you know? And then I started reading about the power of pictures. Our eyes are like 90% of the nerve fibers in our brains are related to our eyesight. We are pattern spotters. We are constantly looking to make sense. And the message goes into your visual cortex in the back of your head. It literally, a picture can sit there for decades. You don't realize it's there until bang, you see it again. So this is a really important way of shaping the way we think. And when I showed people the picture, many people said, that's how I've always thought of sustainable development, but I've never seen the picture. And once they had the picture, you could tell they're like, no, I'm strong. I have my ideas, I have my words, and I have the picture. So that's what led me to draw it and to I'm still standing here with a rubber ring pointing to the same picture because it's powerful. We see a different shape of progress. It goes deep in our mindsets.
Wow. This is so beautiful because also, you know, that kind of ring, you t'as parlé de battement de cœur. You told me about heartbeat. And que l'économie doit être une sorte de mouvement de battement de cœur. Et ben, c'est intéressant parce que quand tu m'as dit ça, ça m'a ramené à la Terre qui tourne autour du Soleil, avec l'hiver, le froid qui monte et puis qui redescend. Froid qui monte et puis qui redescend. Voilà. La végétation qui prend et puis qui descend. Et quand on regarde les saisons, les 4 saisons globales au sud et au nord, on voit que en fait, c'est un rythme cardiaque. Et est-ce que c'est justement pas là-dedans, effectivement, qu'il faudrait aller? Je pense que oui. Mais maintenant, je te pose une question qui m'a, moi, le plus perturbé. Moi, j'étais très curieux et je me suis dit, mais quel est l'état du monde? Je suis tombé sur un site que tu connais certainement. C'est Good Life Leeds University, l'université de Leeds, qui a publié en fonction des pays. Ça m'intéressait parce qu'après avoir fondé Limite, il me fallait que je trouve, tiens, quelle est l'intensité de chaque pays. Et j'ai trouvé, effectivement, on vous met les liens en description. Et j'ai été voir la Belgique. Quand j'ai vu la Belgique, je me suis dit, ça fait mal. Et le point commun, c'est que j'ai ensuite été voir la France. Puis j'ai été voir le Canada, les États-Unis, le Qatar. CO2 emissions, c'est énorme. Et donc j'ai compris, effectivement, il y a des années, en allant voir un peu tous ces points-là, que plus un pays est énergivore, pollue, plus un pays a une intensité économique, matérielle intense, plus sa démocratie est stable. Ou plus on va dire que ses acquis sociaux sont forts. Et puis j'ai commencé à aller voir le Sénégal, mon pays d'origine, le pays de mon père. Et là j'ai vu effectivement, c'est pas mal, hein, il y a pire que le Sénégal. Mais j'ai vu effectivement que même par rapport à ma famille, Congo, Maroc, que moins on utilise d'énergie, moins l'intensité matérielle est élevée, moins on pollue, plus malheureusement les acquis sociaux ne sont pas bons. Et à ce moment-là, j'ai été pris d'un stress en me disant mais le combat est tellement rude et je voudrais savoir quel pays se rapproche le plus de l'économie du donut. Est-ce que c'est par le hasard? Est-ce que c'est par le déterminisme environnemental, l'environnement qui y est? Et comment est-ce que justement des pays qui ont autant d'intensité, enfin, comment est-ce qu'il est possible aujourd'hui de trouver le bien-être humain, le bonheur, fonctionner en société sans dégager plein de pollution et avoir une intensité énergétique incroyable? Et quel pays s'en rapproche le plus?
I can tell you, it's Costa Rica.
J'ai toujours rêvé d'aller au Costa Rica en avion.
Yeah. So
Ouais.
it's such a great question, and I'm so glad you found this website, right? The Good Life website made by my colleague Andrew Fanning and Dan O'Neill and others. They took the donut concept and downscaled it for 150 countries.
Say thanks to him because of that, parce que grâce à ça, je mets des claques à des politiciens dans des conférences. Ils disent non, la Belgique, we are Belgium and we did a lot. You do a lot. Bam.
Voilà.
Et ça calme. Mais je te laisse continuer.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, this website, and we made a graph, a scatter plot of lots of the countries. First of all high-income countries are in red overshoot, right? So to me, it's an invitation. Next time you hear somebody talking about developed countries, or you find yourself saying developed countries, like, where am I talking about? Where is this developed countries? None of the countries that are calling themselves developed countries, there's nothing developed about overshooting planetary boundaries. They're destroying the life support systems of Earth. Why on earth should they call themselves developed? No. So I never use that language. I talk about low income, high income. So the country that's closest is Costa Rica. And yeah, so they're not in there. They are closer than others to meeting people's needs, almost within the boundaries of the planet. And there are at least two policies that I can tell you of that they put in place that make sense of this. So they have around like $22,000 per person per year, less than a third of Belgium, for example. So, which is again encouraging. You don't have to be the richest country in the world to say, oh, now we finally did it. What did they do? Really strong investments over many decades in health and education, public health, public education, access for all. It brings people up out of that hole in the middle. Right? It just invest in public health and education. And, as you know, they have extraordinary forests. And if you look at a graph of Costa Rica's forest cover, it was going down, 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 down. They were logging it because, if you don't value the forest, you cut it, you can sell the timber. It was going down. In 1987, they made a regulation, we will stop cutting the forest. And they actually started to pay some farmers to stop cutting the forest. You see the graph goes down, 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 down. 1987, and it starts coming back. And what they didn't realize, I've spoken to people from the government, they said, when we made this regulation, we knew we had to protect the forest. What we didn't realize, actually, was it would make our country an ecological haven. It would make it ecologically famous. It becomes a place where people want to come visit and see nature. So, of course, they've benefited from tourism. Now, that has a complexity, lots of airplane flights coming in. But as a nation, they have benefited from protecting the forest. So they have invested in it. And I'm really glad you asked, is there any country close? Because if you look only at Senegal or Malawi, a lot of human deprivation, not overshooting their share of the planet. Then you look at the US, Canada, Australia, doing very well compared to other countries socially. A lot of hidden poverty inside that, but doing better than most. Massive overshoot of planetary boundaries. You can get depressed, we're just off in one direction or another. It's really important that there are countries that are close, Mauritius as well, Colombia as well. This demonstrates that maybe it could be possible to do this, and not on the biggest income in the world. So we need to be much more publicly providing the essentials of life. To me, it's a very strong signal. Public provisioning of healthcare, public education, public transport, more investment in public social housing, rather than saying, trust the market, right? And you need a fairly equitable society, and you need rules that protect nature on which we depend. So, yes, Costa Rica is closer than any other. And we all need to change direction, because they're not currently heading towards it. They might be just heading past it. So every country needs to start heading towards getting into that space.
Je prends le cas de l'Europe. L'Europe n'a pas de ressources en suffisance par rapport à sa demande en énergie, en matières premières. Il faudrait refaire des mines. we have to keep the fossil fuels into the ground because of the climate change. Et donc, j'avais cru comprendre, en travaillant beaucoup ces questions-là, que l'Europe est toujours sur un système colonial, qui fait qu'il va chercher dans d'autres pays du Global Sud des matières premières, de l'énergie, de la main-d'œuvre humaine, des terres arables pour cultiver ananas, avocado, etc., pour l'amener chez lui. Et donc, que maintenant que nous avons une forte intensité, la biocapacité des autres pays est en train de décliner parce qu'en fait, notre modèle du Global North, États-Unis, Japon, on rajoute la Chine dedans aujourd'hui, de l'Europe, et comme les États-Unis ont beaucoup de ressources, le Canada aussi, la Chine aussi, they got a lot of resources inside their country. L'Europe, terre arable, oui, mais c'est perfusé au reste du monde. En fait, on n'arrivera pas à implémenter l'économie du donut si on ne permet pas, en fait, aux pays de gérer par eux-mêmes. Et en fait, il faut couper le colonialisme pour y arriver, en quelque sorte. Ou alors on peut y arriver en maintenant le statu quo de relations internationales. Je ne sais pas si tu vois ce que je veux dire.
I think it's a really powerful point and a big long-term vision. At the moment, so some people say, no, we need this trade. We need Europe to be buying because this is what gives livelihoods to people in the global south. We depend upon it. But it's extractive of critical resources that once those countries have higher incomes, they will wish they hadn't exported it all. They needed it for their own basic housing and education and health and transport. So I think we need to move to patterns of much more South-South trade. So the global South becomes its own hub of resources and meeting the needs of its own people, right? That's what the economic demand should be, not servicing the global North, but meeting the needs of our own people to get everyone out of the donut's hole. And the global North needs to massively reduce its draw on new resources and take a look around. There are decades, centuries long of resources already here that have been extracted from all over the world. We've already packed a treasure chest of resources here in every phone, in every building, in every house. So now it's time to get really smart about reusing, refurbishing, repairing, restoring, urban mining, right? The lithium we need, the rare earth metal, they're already here. Or at least that must be the first place that people turn to. So it's a total paradigm shift in terms of going from linear to circular and finding the resources within.
Because we go far away, because it's cheap.
It's cheap, and by the way, we can do the mining in another country and we don't have to see it. And it's easier because we've structured this system in a very linear way. We've inherited, hosepipe again, right? We've inherited linear degenerative systems. We take new materials, let me go to the mine, let me go to the forest, get more new materials, stick it in the pipe of production, make it into something we want, use it sometimes only once, and then at the other end of it, we just throw it away. And that's what's pushing us over planetary boundaries. So this linear needs to become circular. It needs to become a cyclical, regenerative economy. So the new paradigm says, you've got to use resources again and again and again, far more carefully, more collectively, more creatively, and more slowly. And the beauty of it is it's actually an invitation to creativity, right? We all love to go into a building or a cafe and say, wow, this used to be a station or a brewery or a printing press. And we feel the history around us, but it's been playfully reinvented for now. So reusing things is going to be creative. And it creates local jobs, right? In every place. There's a lovely saying from the world of cosmo-local production, right? We should all produce locally. They say that atoms are heavy. Right? Look. Atoms are heavy. Yeah. We shouldn't be shipping chairs around the world.
Attention à ton dos.
Atoms are heavy, so they should circulate locally. Right? We should reuse these materials locally. But bits, data bits, or ideas, they're light. Now, ideas can travel globally. So we should be sharing designs. What if we shared open source designs? This is how to build a house. Use the materials that are locally available to you. There's a wonderful platform called WikiHouse. They exactly share to you. Anyone can make a house. If you have a jig, like a cutting machine and a tool, You can use locally available materials, assemble the house, make it your own where you are. So the ideas travel globally, but atoms stay and travel locally. To me, this is a really beautiful invitation to a future economy, because it means a designer in Paris can say, okay, what materials are available here now to build a house? And a designer in Senegal can ask themselves, right, what materials do I have here? And I can learn from those designs, but I use local materials in my region, and we build locally relevant for ourselves. So, cosmo-local production to me is the future.
Wow, this is so beautiful because, je vais reparler en français, c'est génial. C'est-à-dire qu'aujourd'hui, on a besoin d'énergie fossile pour transporter des matières lourdes à travers le monde, les transformer, et on les transforme, mais ils sont toujours lourdes, et refaire le tour du monde. Voilà. Et donc forcément, dans une économie qui aura moins d'énergie fossile par limite, mais en même temps par limite climatique, c'est ça la solution, c'est comment est-ce que les atomes qui forment des molécules qui sont lourdes, du métal, de ci, de ça, en fait, font des petits trajets locaux. Et qu'il faut le décider maintenant, parce qu'à un moment donné, en fait, simplement, ça va ralentir. Je ne vais pas prendre trop de ton temps, je voudrais arriver tout doucement, mais sûrement à la conclusion de ce super agréable échange. Je voulais te demander si, et ça va être la question qui pique un peu, et c'est ce qui m'a fait penser à cette question, c'est ce que tu as dit au début de notre conversation. Tu as dit « back to the consumerism ». When it's too much bad information, quand ça nous stresse. Effectivement, l'un des réflexes humains, c'est de réactiver du déni, dénialisme, etc. Et de foncer dans le consumérisme. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot my problems. I got my new iPhone, I got my PlayStation 5, I got my brand new GTA 6, Grand Theft Auto I can play all night long, and the burger, everything, taking the flight. Tout ça, on est dans un système aujourd'hui, c'est la drogue. Et ça... On oublie les problèmes. Netflix, HBO, cinéma, video games, tout. Et là, maintenant, c'est ça un peu ce que ça m'a inspiré comme question, c'est est-ce que le donut est compatible avec un cerveau qui a 300 000 ans, Homo sapiens, 300K years, et ce même Homo sapiens, the same Homo sapiens, who got for the first time in 300k years, 10,000 years of good climate, de bon climat, 10 000 ans de bon climat, donc nous avons 300 000 ans, 10 000 ans de bon climat, 150 ans, 150 years of industry, et seulement 70 ans, and just 70 years of, how can I explain that, abundance, a lot of energy, a lot of food, everything. And, you know, our brain's getting crazy a little bit. Notre cerveau devient... on n'a pas le temps de s'adapter à ça. Est-ce que l'économie du donut, c'est une sorte de delirium tremens? Est-ce que c'est... You know, when somebody's drinking a lot of alcohol and we say, stop, no alcohol, and you're like, oh, I need my alcohol. We call that delirium tremens. It's a crazy bar in Brussels, by the way, called delirium tremens. It's the same for all the drugs. When you stop, for example, your iPhone, oh no, give me your phone, and that's it. Your kids are like, oh no. Is it the same, you think, the donut economy? Like, okay, let's put it right now on the society. On le met, on l'active. Et au début, ça va être, oh my God. Est-ce que tu vois ce que je veux dire un petit peu?
Je comprends complètement. Great question. Oh, is it the same? I think it's going to be, yes, right. Initially, when there's no longer the energy that there is, the cheap energy that for that drug injection, people will miss I think we'll look back and think, wow, wasn't it extraordinary? The abundance, the opulence, the way we lived. Wow, so recently. And we already knew the facts, but we couldn't act on them to actually save those resources, to use them more carefully. We burned them for what, right? We were just like burning money. When you know in your mind, you know in just next week, I'm going to really need that. But still, we can't help but burn our way through it. So I think we'll look back and say, why were we so asleep? People get very caught in consumerism for sure. And, you know, we've all seen a child have a phone taken away. They were playing a video game, and it's that frontal lobe. It's like,
it's off.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Boom.
So yeah, there will be, I'm sure, and already people are struggling with that. But I think the transformation, the changes we can make, I think it's going to be creative, right? What these games actually don't do, we're responding, we're sucked into those worlds rather than actually creating worlds. And I think it's going to be creative to reinvent people. The real world will become more like a video game, not a disaster video game, but like interesting. How do I navigate this? And I think we'll be called back into connecting with each other. We'll be called back into figuring out how to live together, work together, share resources together. We have to make sure it's appealing. We have to make sure it's an invitation so that people want to be part of it rather than resist it or... what I fear most is really deeply polarized societies where people can't even listen to each other across that divide anymore. Because then we just get caught in very destructive narratives and very toxic politics, I think. So the donut has to offer people playful spaces. And actually, just calling it donut, I mean, everybody already knows. A lot of people are intimidated by economics. But when you say donut economics, everyone's like, this isn't intimidating, there's something playful happening here. And it invites a different kind of conversation. So we have to make it playful, engaging, have to make these desirable ways of living, and have to save the next generation of kids from being raised on the screen, because we have to save our minds.
Qu'est-ce que disent les politiciens qui sont dans le business as usual? Nous, on en a en Belgique, il y en a en France. On ne change pas, ça nous a apporté tellement de choses positives que c'est le meilleur modèle. Tu les rencontres, tu es face à eux, tu discutes avec eux. Ils savent que tu n'es pas n'importe qui. Ils savent ce que tu as conceptualisé. C'est quoi leurs excuses?
They'll often say, well, yes, no, of course, we're doing this. Because the thing about the donut, it's very hard to disagree. So I could say, do you think some people should be left in poverty? No. Do you think we should destroy the life support system of this planet? No. So nobody's going to disagree. They'll often say, either, well, of course we're doing things, we're taking steps, but you have to be realistic. Then there becomes this question of what's real, right? What's realistic? Is it today's politics, or is it actually the integrity and the functioning of the earth? So what is realistic? They will, tell excuses about what they're putting in action, or say voters won't support it, voters won't vote for it. So, and it's so much easier to talk about growth because very few people question that. It's so much easier to keep doing business as usual because everybody else is doing it, so no one questions why you're doing it. If you go and stand somewhere completely different, you have to explain suddenly why you're somewhere completely different. And that's why I stand right side by side with the politicians like Barbara Tracht here in Brussels. She was the Secretary of State of Economic Transition. She said, we're going to do the donut in Brussels. She adopted it. That's a brave politician because you actually have to explain what the heck it is you're doing rather than just going grow. And it's politicians who then model it for other places. When it began in Amsterdam first, then it kicked off in Copenhagen, then in Brussels, then in Barcelona. Now there's 90 cities around the world where the local government, the town council, have said, yeah, we're using the donut to guide us because we want to thrive. We don't want to grow endlessly. So there are really strong ripples of inspiration. So I spend most of my time just working with those people rather than arguing with the old school. I think for them, the most persuasive thing is going to see other politicians already doing it until you get enough critical mass. And then I can turn back and say, why aren't you doing this yet? I mean, this is obviously where things need to go. Why are you being so slow? When are you going to get on board? When are you going to catch up and explain to your citizens why you haven't moved faster? So I work with those who are already in motion because there's plenty of them. And that, I believe, is where the change is going to come from.
Incroyable. Les amis, la théorie du donut n'est pas à attendre du top, bien sûr, this is my opinion. On ne doit pas attendre que ça vienne forcément d'au-dessus, qu'il y ait des changements politiques au-dessus. Genre, on applique la théorie du donut du jour au lendemain dans l'économie. Ça vient de vous, dans votre quotidien, en territoire, dans votre ville, dans votre mairie, quel que soit, dans votre hôpital, dans votre travail éventuellement, dans votre entreprise, de vous dire, tiens, comment est-ce que on va faire en sorte que tout le monde soit bien payé, que tout le monde ait accès à la santé dans l'entreprise, et qu'en même temps, notre impact il soit contrôlé sur les limites planétaires. I go fast because we don't have enough time. Donc, n'hésitez pas, on vous met tous les liens en description par rapport au travail de Kate Raworth, qui est un des plus importants. Un des défis qui va être très difficile aussi, c'est je suis d'origine sénégalaise, et j'ai été au Congo, au Sénégal, je vais beaucoup moins maintenant, forcément, je prends moins l'avion, mais quand je vais dans le Global Sud, voir la famille et tout ça, la boussole, c'est toujours la croissance. C'est le modèle européen, c'est on veut atteindre l'Europe, on va aller aux États-Unis, on veut la même chose, mais quand on creuse les réalités économiques et surtout de possession des matières premières, extraction, quelles entreprises, extraits.
D'accord.
Ok, merci. Et le fait que des politiques étrangères se mêlent aussi du Global Sud fait que je crois que ça va être évalué qu'il faudra très très longtemps avant que le Sud atteigne le même niveau de développement que le Western World. Et je crois même qu'il n'y arrivera pas parce qu'il faut changer de modèle. Donc moi, je suis très inquiet de comment essayer, d'un point de vue plus local, aussi dans les pays d'origine de mon père et dans le Global Sud, d'essayer d'incorporer ça. Comment est-ce que, et ça c'est une petite question rapidement avant la conclusion, comment est-ce que tu fais pour leur en parler sans faire du néocolonialisme, sans venir once again, white woman living in the Western world, England coming to say to the black people and Arabic people and the other people how to proceed. It's hard to manage, right?
So one of the reasons why I don't do that. For me, a really important principle of the way the donut has spread is that me and my team, we've never once tried to persuade anybody to use it. Go on, use the donut. No.
Trust me.
Yeah, because it has to be people in a place who say, you know what, given that I know about my own context here, this looks like a useful tool. So right now there's a group in Kenya who've said, oh, this looks useful, right? We've got a big problem with people living in the hole. Yep. We don't have a big problem with overshoot, so it's opposite of European, but still we have to also figure out how to get everybody into the donut without doing what all these countries before us did, overshoot the planet. So it's beginning. Will it spread there? I don't know. For me, that's, to be honest, if it's useful to countries in Africa, I'm there. I used to live in Tanzania. I would love to be talking about donut economics in Swahili. That would really thrill me.
You speak Swahili?
Yeah. But,
okay, great.
But what matters and it's happening in Malaysia. There's a really amazing city in Malaysia, Ipoh, who are saying we want to be the first city in Asia that really says we're aiming to get into the donut. So they're demonstrating it, and that's the example that other places in Asia will follow. They don't need to listen to me. Why would you listen to me? Listen to the people in Ipoh who says this is useful to us, and this is how we're making it relevant to here. For me, as a white European, the most important thing is to influence the region I'm from, and this is the region with the historic responsibility to move.
True.
And I'm going to talk about the global north, right, as a kind of extension of Europe and the West. So that's where I place my focus. And if the donut is most influential there, then at least it's serving to bring us back within. It's a worldview that's a very Western worldview. If in parts of Africa they say, we have Ubuntu. In Latin America, we have Buen Vivir. Go for it.
Buen Vivir. And we'll bring,
you
know that. Wow, that's crazy.
We'll bring the donut, right? We don't have these indigenous philosophies that are earth-centered. So we've got a donut instead.
Total.
And if these things can work together in a pluriverse of ideas, all the better.
Ubuntu qui signifie « je suis » parce que nous sommes. Et c'est vraiment l'idée du donut. Kate, merci. Un dernier conseil à ceux qui nous ont regardés, un livre à lire, éventuellement le tien, on va le mettre. Éventuellement un conseil dans la vie de tous les jours, quelque chose à regarder, n'hésite pas, tu peux leur dire si tu as des conseils.
So I think the concept of cosmo-local production, and which comes out of the Fab City movement, would be really, really interesting for you to bring into your program and talk with the folks, and then I can put you in touch. Because I think it's a really fascinating design. I tried to bring together all the things that I wanted everybody to read into donut economics.
Ton livre déjà, ton livre.
Keep finding the alternatives. And I invite everybody to visit our platform, donuteconomics.org. There's people in every language, in every culture. You can just look and who else from where I am, whether it's in Senegal or in Belgium, or who else is, oh, what's happening? Maybe they've created a group. All the resources that we've made are there in multiple languages. People can just take it and use it and run with the ideas. I believe, ideas can travel globally and we need to make them fly. So let's spread ideas, evolve them to make sense where we are and share them back. That, for me, is the work.
Kate, merci beaucoup.
À vous.
À très bientôt. Likez, abonnez-vous, commentez, vous savez comment ça se passe. Et à très bientôt pour une autre grosse vidéo sur la chaîne Limite. Bye bye. Wow, super. Merci. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.